Hi, this is Mujtaba Al-Hilo and welcome back to another lecture on short story. In this course, we deal with different types of short stories with different theories, concepts, and backgrounds. So today we will talk about another important concept of short story or fiction in general, which is the narrator. Uh, in short story or in novel or in fiction in general, we have different types of narrators, and each narrator has his own perspective, has his own effect, and has his own fingerprints on the plot, on the theme, and on the story in general, on fiction. Today we will talk about the most important types of narrators, which are two types. They are number one, first person narrator, and number two, third person narrator. We have other types like the second person narrator, but these two are the most recurrent and they most appear in fiction. So let's start and let's make the lecture short in a nutshell. The first type is first person narrator. It is a mode of storytelling in which a narrator relates events from his own viewpoint, using the first person I or we. He is one of the characters. This narrator deals with the emotional and subjective side of the story. So, we have this type of narrator, which is one of the characters. He relates, he tells you the story that happens to him. For example, you have a friend and he starts telling you about a story, about a journey, about a trip he had, for example, to Europe, to France, to Paris. So that he is one of the characters of the story. He is involved within the events, within the conflicts, within the story of the fiction. That's why he has his own viewpoints, because he is one of the characters, because he only sees what happens to him. He cannot see beyond the wall, he cannot see beyond that door in the room. Okay, that's why his judgments, his viewpoints are mostly subjective. They are biased. They cannot be trusted entirely. There are always a place for skepticism towards what he relates towards what he says, because he only sees what's going on in front of him. Okay, and his judgments become subjective in this perspective, and he mostly talks or encounters that psychological part, emotional part of the story. He always tries to go deep into the mind of the characters, because he's speaking from his own experiences. We go inside his mind, we go inside his experience, we feel what he feels, we experience what he experiences. That's why this is a good point in the first person narrator. We go deep down into his mind, into his mental status. That's why this is one of the good things in first person narrator. On the other hand, the bad points in this perspective is that he cannot have that comprehensive, general, universal perspective towards the events, towards the conflict. We cannot trust him because he cannot know everything. One of the examples in this regard is a sentence borrowed from Jane Eyre by Bronte. As an example, I could not unlove him now, merely because I found that he had ceased to notice me. Look, this is a very personal, subjective experience. The character here is talking about herself. She is talking about her own experiences. She is not sure. She is hesitant. She doesn't know whether to love him or not to love him, as she says, to unlove him. Because she is hesitant, she doesn't know what to do, she is not sure. Okay, she is so emotional in this perspective. She cannot decide what to do exactly in this situation. This hesitation, this subjectivity, this emotional side of the story This is one of the characteristics of first-person narrator. That's very interesting because we feel what the character feels. We go deep down into his or her emotions, into her heart. That's the good point. But again, the bad point is that she is not decisive. She cannot decide. She does not know what to do exactly. Let's go to the second type of narrator here, which is the third-person narrator. The narrator here refers to all characters with a third-person pronouns like he, she, they, or it, or second-person pronouns you. The narrator is not involved in the story. He is not a character, and he is mostly objective. He can see all angles of the story. Look, this is completely different from the first-person narrator. The opposite side. It lies on the opposite side of the shore. The narrator here is not a character. The narrator here is the writer himself, is the implied writer, okay, that we talked about in the previous lecture. The narrator is the implied author. And he always talks about his characters by using pronouns like he, she, they, or it, or sometimes you, pronouns you. And the narrator here is not involved in the story, and this type of narrator is distinct in his ability to see everything. He is the omniscient. He is the person who sees and knows everything in the story. He deals with the story from above like a god. He has that god-like perspective towards the world. He knows everything. He understands everything. His judgments are mostly objective because he knows everything. His judgments are trustworthy. We can trust the narrator in this perspective because the narrator here controls everything, knows everything, and deals with everything. And he's, as I said, he is objective more than that first-person narrator. As an example, here we have this opening sentence from the masterpiece of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It is a very famous sentence. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Look, these features, what we see here in this sentence, the universality. We see truth, we see objectivity, we see very decisive, strong judgments. We see some wisdom. These features can be told or given only by the third-person narrator, because we see power, strength here, we see universality here, we see fact here, we see truth here, we see some grand narratives about humanity, about the nature of life. So this is the type of third-person narrative that we can trust, we can depend on, and we can deal with, because he controls the plot, the novel, the short story. This type of narrator controls everything, and he knows everything. So these are the most important types of narrator. For the coming lectures, we will deal with other concepts in fiction and more specifically in short story. So thank you for watching and stay tuned. Bye bye.